And I think it'd be useful to get a bit of background on each of you while you're here. You know, how you got into rugby league in the first place, maybe where you're from in Canada, because we assume, Canada, you all live next door to each other. Just because Rich and I are 2 cities apart.
Toronto's there, Montreal, and then all the other bits, and then there's the bit on the west, and then that's it.
So I don't know what order you want to do it, but it would. I think it would benefit us all if we knew a little bit more about you.
Sure, no, absolutely. My background is played union in high school, like the majority of the Canadian kids. Got out of the game for quite some time. Toronto Wolfpack came around, and Nicholas Mew actually sent out a request to people, seeing if anybody was interested in playing Masters. And having watched, before I get into that, Toronto Wolfpack was literally my first interaction into rugby league, and immediately loved the game. I thought the pace, hard hitting, I thought it was fantastic. So when Nicholas put out that call, signed up right away, and that was my first introduction. So that was two and a half years ago for the Ontario Greybeards, and been sticking with it since. So I am from Toronto, and oh yeah, right here, and yeah, the Greybeards. And so absolutely love it, and can't wait to continue my Masters Rugby League career, and keep touring, and hopefully visiting any of the countries of anybody that's watching here. And anybody who is watching, feel free to come over to Canada and play us as well. We definitely want to have everybody there.
Jarrett's our big hoss on the team.
He's also been crucial in recruiting. There's a number of players who play for us now.
Who's going to turn him down? It's on your door, you're going to play it. It's the biggest scrum half I've ever seen.
Right on. So I'm Mike. I'm from just outside of Toronto, a happy little place called Orangeville. I have some family in Australia that I've been fortunate to visit a couple of times growing up, and in '95 I went over and visited family in Canberra just after the Raiders had won their grand final, and it was very unexpected, and I was there shortly afterwards, and the VHS tape had just become available, so I got to watch that. And God, that sound makes me sound old. But it was, you know, I had never seen the game before, and heard about it a lot, but just seeing the electric atmosphere of it and the way that their eyes lit up when they talked about it, I thought this has got to be something special. So I watched a lot of it. When it became possible to see it sort of on satellite and things like that, I used to watch it whenever I could. When I was in high school, I played a little bit of rugby. It was not a terribly long career. But then I had a year as a teaching exchange program. I lived in Australia for a year and lived on the Gold Coast and got to see the Titans every one of their games. That was a home game. Again, not tremendously successful. They happened to win the Wooden Spoon that year, which I remember the captain of the team went up and said, "I'll use it to stir me porridge," and everyone kind of went, "Huh." It was, but just getting out there and getting more involved in the sport. I played touch rugby league at the time, and I thought this is something I really want to get into. But of course, coming back to Canada after that year, I had no avenue for it. And then, so fast forward about 6 years later, I thought I was still keeping tabs on the NRL, trying to find out more and more about Super League. And I thought, whatever happened to that guy, Fui Moi Moi? That guy was just a dynamite player. And so I Googled his name, and it says he's just signed with Toronto. And I knew that there was a Toronto somewhere in New South Wales. So I thought, I didn't know they had a team. So I clicked on the article, and I went, oh my God, that's my Toronto. My Toronto has a team. And I instantly bought season tickets and had been to every home game, bar a couple for weddings and things. And that was it. I was hooked. So when the Greybeards had started up, I got in as soon as I could. We had a meeting underneath the tree. We figured out that it was something that had enough interest and enough momentum, and we got her going.
Yeah. That famous Brampton rugby tree.
That tree, man.
Tree.
Yeah.
I've taken an interesting path. I actually didn't come from playing any rugby as a kid. It just wasn't really anything that was available. I grew up playing baseball my whole life. And Jared and I have been pals since we were teenagers. Yeah. So Jared came over to me and he was like, hey pal, there's a sport. I love to run, so there's a sport that I really think you'd love to play. Why don't you come out? And that's that same tree that we all kind of met under, and I fell in love with it. Like it is such a wonderful sport, super inclusive, and it brings that element for me of speed, with the aggression of the hitting, and yeah, fell in love with it. Really, really enjoyed it, and obviously super honored to be selected to play for Canada.
I've told my story a number of times, and too often. I think people might have heard it because I talk about it all the time. It's pretty much the only topic of conversation that I have now. Growing up, I did not play sport. I played the piano. I collected coins. I did everything in the house. The great outdoors was wonderful to look at through the front window. But then, this came along, and very long story short, I became very, very passionate about this. The tree, this legendary tree that we're all talking about. If you go to Google Maps and you type in Ontario Greybeards, you'll find where our headquarters is. It's in Brampton, Ontario, and there's a rugby union clubhouse there, and somehow we've managed to take over their spot on Google Maps. So it's Ontario Greybeards.
It's happening, Phil.
That's expansion. That's expansion.
So it's at the CAA, the Canadian Automobile Association Centre in Brampton. And all these guys, we come from roughly an hour from every direction to come to this clubhouse. So I'm an hour north up in Barrie. And then there's others who come from places called Whitby or Oshawa or in the Guelph area, Burlington, Hamilton, Ancaster. And so we'll drive an hour just to get to our practices on a Sunday to play each other and hopefully as many opponents as we can, because it means so much to us, And when we decided to form as a club, like our first time playing, we weren't an official club. It was just a group of guys who got together under the banner of the Ontario Greybeards, and many, many thanks to my wife for coming up with the name. No idea where she got it from. But,
Hold on a sec. Say that again.
I'm in Rugby. It's so good.
So we met under this tree, and we said, okay, are we going to go forward with this? What are we going to do? How are we going to arrange this? Are we going to operate out of this clubhouse? What do we need to do? And so there was a long process of trying to incorporate, trying to register as a nonprofit, because that opens up a lot of doors as well in terms of sponsorship. And everybody was like, you know what, this is great. Let's make a commitment. We'll do this. And people started taking on different jobs, and we've gone on from there. So we had an English team come over, and this sort of forced the creation of the club, because they were a masters club based in London. They weren't officially based in London in the sense that players came from all across the UK. It was whoever could afford the time and the cost to come over. And so they sent a message over to Canada and said, hey, we've got a masters club. Do you have an opponent we could play? And so this went through several hands until it came to me, and somebody said, would you organize a team? And not knowing what I was in for, I said, sure. And that's when I reached out. And it was actually pretty amazing. Within the space of, I'd say 2 weeks, I had 30 to 40 people reach out to me and say, yeah, I'll play. Not every one of those came through. And some said, well, I'll commit to play one game, but I can't commit to play two. I don't know. And then when we actually played the first game, a number of the guys who were in that game but didn't commit to the second said, I'm playing the second now too, right? And we were like, well, we don't have a jersey for you, because we were using different kit. I don't care. I'll borrow somebody else's. When they come off, we'll just swap jerseys, because they loved it so much. Like instantly, when you're on the pitch and you're running around with all those guys and you're playing, you can't help but love this sport. And as I said, I was never sporty or physical. I mean, I played some hockey, but I played goalie, largely because I'm beautiful. And I needed the equipment to protect this gorgeousness.
He played without a mask. That helped.
But in any case, it's an addictive, in a wonderful addictive kind of way, where when you do this, you want to do more of it. And so this has grown from there. And we've incorporated as a nonprofit, registered as a nonprofit rather, and we've even got more plans in future. Now Mike can talk about this, because there is a potential festival or tournament that's going to happen in July of next year, and we're hoping to see a British club come over and play us on Canada Day. Lots of Canadian fireworks, lots of celebration, play a festival, help introduce the sport to other people. While you're over, perhaps head across the border for July the 4th and see their lesser but interesting fireworks.
Yeah, so there's a town about an hour west of Toronto called Guelph, and they have a Masters Festival that's been pretty successful, and it's Masters of all sports. So they've got this large park called Exhibition Park, and they've got Masters softball, they've got a proper rugby pitch and a football field, they've got a track and all sorts of things. So they have in the past had Masters for lots of different sports. And we connected with them to do something for Rugby League, and initially they were asking, do you think you can get 4 or 5 guys to come out and do a try rugby kind of thing? And I said, I think we can do a little bit better than that. We can at least get an intra-squad game, and if we can convince people to line up that timing, it would be an amazing time to come and see all that Ontario has to offer. If you're going to be touring around Canada, this would be a great spot to make it. So we're in very initial talks to reach out to our UK counterparts and see if tours can come through at that point, as well as the teams that I'd mentioned before from the States. If they're able to travel, it works really well. The Friday is our holiday, the Monday is their holiday, so yeah, the town of Guelph has worked with these organizers. They've got huge funding for the fireworks to do part of their Canada Day celebrations and things. The whole park will have its liquor license taken care of there, so that's a huge bit of organizing taken off our backs, and it's just a fantastic opportunity. So like we can see lots and lots of opportunities for growth. We've got a proven track record of when we're able to put on an event, even just as the Greybeards have started. We've got a lot of sponsorship that has been directed towards sort of our own marketing. We've got some feather banners and some A-frames and things. So when we put out a game, an intra-squad game, it looked pretty swish. We had, Nick was mentioning a couple of the guys who had just come to see us for the first time in July, and I don't have to tell you guys that Rugby League's the greatest game. There's, as a sport, it's phenomenal. There's room for everybody. It's fast. It's clever. It's hard-hitting if you want it to be. Masters is every bit as you want it to be, as inclusive. So we've had these guys join us up right away. Like there are people who there's a guy who comes from Saskatchewan, which is, if you were to drive, it would be about 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a 3-day trip, right?
Yeah, he does not drive.
But he'll fly in. He'll fly in. Like we've had him. Well, I mean, he's with us, but he on the tour, but flew in weekly for several weeks, several practices in a row, right?
He has a connection with Air Canada, so he gets discounted.
Yeah, I mean, he's the president of Air Canada.
He's an air hostess.
Yeah, but he would literally fly in from Saskatchewan to come to Toronto. So what is that? A 2-hour flight from Saskatchewan?
Just longer than that.
Longer.
4 hours. But that's just the level of commitment, right? Like that people are willing to sort of give to the sport. You kind of fall in love
So
with
if you are unwilling to drive 20 minutes down the road, one of our guys flies 4 hours just to come to practices to play us.
League One clubs, you've got no excuse now not to go to the
Actually, on Halloween weekend, he wanted to make the deal to keep peace at home so that he could take the kids with him. He drove 8 hours to Winnipeg, and for 5:30 in the morning flew to Toronto, practiced and played a game with us, flew back directly afterwards, picked up his kids, went out trick-or-treating, and then drove 8 hours back to...
Now, if that's not love for his sport, what is?
As long as Greta Thunberg's not watching this, I think we're okay.